Okay, well, Ed, I think we can go ahead and start.
Okay.
Yeah. Dan, do you want to say anything about this?
Yeah, Cynthia Wilson came out to California and recorded an album with me a few years ago. Cynthia Wilson sings Dan Damon, and one of the songs on that is Ruth Duck's uh, hymn, Wash, O God, Our Sons and Daughters. And Cynthia said she wanted to record that with Ruth and do that on the album. So we get to listen to that as we start.
All right.
Wash, O God, our sons and daughters, where your cleansing waters flow. Number them among your people. Bless as Christ blessed long ago. Weave them garments bright and sparkling. Compass them with love and light. Feel, anoint them, send your spirit, holy dove, and heart's delight. We who bring them long for nurture, by your milk may we be fed. Let us join your feast partaking, cup of blessing, living bread. God, renew us, guide our footsteps, free from sin and all its snares, one with Christ in living, dying, by your Spirit, children heirs. Oh, how deep your holy wisdom, unimagined all your ways. To your name be glory, honor. With our lives we worship, praise. We, your people, stand before you, water washed and spirit born. By your grace our lives we offer. Recreate us, God, transform.
Beautiful. All right. Welcome, everyone. So glad to have all of you here. My name is Ruth Striegel. I am a member of the board of the United Church of Christ Musicians Association. And one of my jobs on the board is to create these Saturday sharings. I'm assisted by Ed Clark, who is running the show here. I'd like to introduce our special guest, Dan Damon. Dan is retired from his primary career as a pastor in the United Methodist Church in California. He has another career as a jazz pianist. He plays in clubs in the Bay Area and does all kinds of things. And a third career as a composer and writer of hymns, serving as an Associate Editor of Hymnody for Hope Publishing Company and teaching church music at the Pacific School of Religion. He has been honored as a fellow of the Hymn Society of the US and Canada in 2016. He's an active member of that organization and is featured sometimes in their magazine, The Hymn. He has edited a collection of hymns by Ruth Duck, The Poetry of Grace, and is a longtime friend and colleague of Ruth's. So he's going to tell us today all about Ruth Duck. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you for the invitation to be here with you. Ruth was a dear friend, and I miss her a lot. This is a beautiful opportunity for me to reflect and to share some of her great work. My first encounter with Ruth Duck was on the phone. I called her up. I was a young pastor starting to write hymns. And I called her up, invited her to come and teach a summer week-long summer session at Pacific School of Religion in Berkeley. And she was very happy and friendly and delighted to come. Brian Wren and a few others were there that week. I think the school probably lost money, but we had a great time doing church music. So that's, I think we don't do it for the money, we do it for the music. But when I got to seminary, this little book was already in the pews there, ever-flowing streams. And usually I say the tattered copies were there in the pews when I got to seminary. Ruth was a pioneer in inclusive language or expansive language. Sometimes we keep recreating the names, but trying to bring gender neutral or a balance of gender images into our hymn writing. So as a young seminary student, I began to sing some of her work. For instance, "Arise, your light has come. The Spirit's call obey. Show forth the glory of your God, which shines on you today. Arise, your light has come, all you in sorrow born. Bind up the broken-hearted ones and comfort those who mourn. Arise, your light has come. Fling wide the prison door. Proclaim the captive's liberty, good tidings to the poor. Arise, O faint in heart, the mountains burst with song. Rise up like eagles on the wing. God's power will make us strong." That used to be "Rise up, O men of God," probably some of you know that. And she was asked to change the language, and instead of just removing the offensive word, she wrote a new text, which we've been singing ever since. The hymn that we heard Cynthia sing, "Wash, O God, Our Sons and Daughters," is the only hymn that she has in the 89 Methodist Hymnal, which unfortunately is the last Methodist hymnal we've been able to publish. Maybe we'll get something later on. Again, one can hope. But Ruth got one in that hymnal, "Wash, O God, Our Sons and Daughters." And I remember her telling me that she had to adjust the second verse. "We who bring them long for nurture by your milk, may we be fed." She was using a feminine image in there way back in 1989. And I think initially it had the word breast in that line, "at your breast may we be fed," or something like that. And I think the word breast could not occur in the Methodist hymnal in 1989. So she adjusted that towards something that that they could allow. By your milk may we be fed. But she was a pioneer, bringing in imagery that just hadn't been used in the Christian church. Another hymn that you may not know is in her book, Dancing in the Universe, a GIA publication. And I wrote a tune for this that's in this collection. Very striking words. O holy wisdom, show your face beyond the Father's fearful mask. We seek your healing and your grace for battered lives. Your peace we ask. O well of silence, send your voice beyond the words of wanton power. O word of love, may we rejoice to hear you speaking in this hour. O fragrant scent of liberty, with your aroma wrap us round. O blessed heart of harmony, unite us in a rainbow sound. Reveal our image in us each, long bound by patriarch's decree. Resound as silence comes to speech, and truth returns to set us free. The line beyond the Father's fearful mask is such a powerful, emotional line, and the need for expansive imagery for God and going beyond Father, Lord, and King language was something that Ruth felt personally. She needed that for her own spirituality to know that God is not a king, a lord, a father, a man, but God is including masculine and feminine and transcending those. And so her writing always moved the church in that direction. Inclusive language was a brand new idea to me when I went to seminary, and of course I resisted it at first. I had grown up in the evangelical free church in Rapid City, South Dakota, and given my heart to Jesus at a young age. But I'd never heard anything about inclusive language or what's wrong with God the Father. And I grew up singing, "He owns the cattle on 1,000 hills, the wealth in every mine." I don't know if you know that song. So I was in my first year in seminary singing, out of ever-flowing streams and resisting these things. And my sister called me up, and she's 4 years younger. She was taking a summer course at a seminary in the Midwest. And she called me and said, "They won't let me take a course in preaching because I'm a woman." And at that point, I began to care about inclusive language. It's like they're messing with my sister. It became personal for me, not just some idea that, oh, now we got to call God mother, It was like, this matters to my sister. And my sister said that she learned at that time that God could understand her as a woman understands a woman, not as a man understands a woman, which we know men have trouble understanding women, women have trouble understanding men. We're different. There was a book, Men Are from Mars, Women Are from Venus. I don't know. But my sister helped me see that if we begin to use language that includes the mother and the father and transcends that, we're doing something very good and very powerful. And Ruth was a pioneer. She was the first person that I knew personally that was leading the charge there. Brian Wren also was an early mentor for me. in hymn writing. One of my favorite texts of Ruth, Spirit Open My Heart. I wrote a 4-part setting of that made it into the Mennonite hymnal. Spirit open my heart to the joy and pain of living. As you love, may I love, in receiving and in giving. Spirit open my heart. Wild Mountain Thyme, the beautiful Irish melody. But the way she opens our hearts with her words, Spirit, open my heart to the joy and pain of living. I don't need anything else but that. Sing that, and we don't need a sermon that day as far as I'm concerned. The verses for that, God, replace my stony heart with a heart that's kind and tender. All my coldness and fear to your grace I now surrender. Write your love upon my heart as my law, my goal, my story. In each thought, word, and deed, may my living bring you glory. May I weep with those who weep, share the joy of sister, brother. In the welcome of Christ, may we welcome one another. Spirit, open my heart to the joy and pain of living. As you love, may I love. In receiving and in giving, Spirit, open my heart. So Ruth was on the hymnal committee for the Chalice hymnal. Not the New Century Hymnal. She was a UCC pastor, but what she told me was they didn't want any poets on their committee. So, which I think was a mistake personally. But she did get to serve on the hymnal committee for the Chalice hymnal. And while she was on that committee, I was with her at the Hymn Society conference. I forget which year that was exactly or where that was. But she asked me if I could write a tune for Here Am I, Brian Wren's text, Here Am I. The committee liked that text, but it was an unusual meter and there was no tune for it. So during the conference, I wrote a tune for it, and I played it for Ruth, and she helped me with the harmony a little bit on the beginning, the first measure there. Ruth was had studied piano and played guitar and sang. She describes herself as not a good musician, but she did occasionally write a tune, and she helped me a little bit with the harmony. Also, she sent me this postcard afterwards. I just share this as a way of showing who she was. Dear Dan, just a note to let you know that the committee, Disciples Hymnal, was thrilled with your tune to Brian's text. Goosebumps. It makes the text accessible. Great tune. They voted to include it. All votes are provisional in case we get more than we need. Thanks, Ruth. So I keep that in my treasured file. I'm hoping that Garrett Seminary will have an archive for Ruth Duck. Maybe we'll put this little postcard in the archive. I have a few unpublished Ruth Duck texts. I'm going to share one in a little bit that I just wrote a tune for. Ruth was hoping to do another collection with Hope with me, but she was taken too soon by Alzheimer's. It was a slow process, but I did edit this book with Hope, and really enjoyed working with Ruth on that. She had a lot of, things, kind of scraps here and there, and she would say, well, I don't know if this was ever published or not. We'd look at this. And so I have a few things here that are in that category. I need to check and make sure that, if it's unpublished and if it's worthy of publication, we want to, Hope will want to put those out in some form here. But the poetry of grace, there are two that I'd like to share from this. The last hymn and the first hymn in the collection. In this ministry of life, earthen vessels we shall be. We know danger, toil, and strife, but through grace we still are free. Since we bear the life of Christ, fragile humans though we be, still we never will lose heart. Earthen vessels we shall be. As clay jars, we bear the light of the life and death of Christ. Through the Spirit's love and might, we know mercy will suffice. In verse 3, words we preach are not our own, but the gospel Christ proclaimed. We shall serve by grace alone. Glory be to Jesus' name. And the refrain, since we bear the life of Christ, fragile humans though we be, still we never will lose heart. Earthen vessels we shall be. And the first hymn is the title song for the collection Poetry of Grace. 2014, so that's 11 years ago now. I'm just checking the copyright on this. The book came out in 2015. So this is a title song for this collection. O holy God, you speak your word, the poetry of grace, the word made flesh to show the way, the love that fills all space. You hear each voice that cries to you. You teach us what to be and do. You lift us up when things go wrong. You are our life, our song. Upon our hearts, your spirit writes the poetry of grace, the law of love, the way of truth, of justice, and of peace. You are our God, and we are yours. So may we live from this day on, your holy people joined to you, that your new day may dawn. How can we witness to the world the goodness of your ways? What words can speak your wonders, God? What music sound your praise? Yet we will write, compose, and sing. With hands and voices, we will trace the pattern of your endless love, the poetry of grace. So it was really a privilege to edit that collection. And I flew to Chicago, spent a couple of days with Ruth and her husband when we were working on that. And again, kind of sifting through manuscripts and finding treasures and then trying to lift up the best of her work. I found an article here, Different Voices, a magazine about music and worship in the Scottish churches. So this is from Scotland about 10 or so years ago. 2010, okay, 15 years ago. I keep saying I did things 30 years ago, but it's actually 40 years ago now that I did things. But here's a little picture of the young Ruth there, and another one. You don't see too many pictures of Ruth. I think she was a little shy of the camera, but there are a couple. And just one of the segments here in this article, Ruth says, although they may treat controversial issues, I seek not to be polemic in my hymn texts, but rather set out to create words that particular communities can sing to express their hope and their commitment to act so that God's will be done on earth as in heaven. Though I do have strong commitments to such causes as the ordination of women, of gay and lesbian people, as well as the search for peace in the world, I try not to preach, but give words to help people imagine a world of peace and justice. I always encouraged Ruth to write hymns. I told her those hymns are going to outlive you. She also, taught worship at Garrett, and here's the second edition, Worship for the Whole People of God. She wrote, a wonderful worship textbook, and she wrote Bread for the Journey, Flames of the Spirit. She was. It was amazing all the things that she wrote and published. But I always told her your hymns will live on more than anything else that you do. And she encouraged me also in my hymn writing. When I was a young United Methodist hymn writer, she said, I think you're going to be one of the leaders. You can imagine what that meant to me. But she was very encouraging to her students. I noticed many, tributes on Facebook that came in shortly after she died. And certainly we all have our stories to share. There's one short song that she wrote words and music to. I helped her with the harmonization. She was skilled enough to put basic chords to a melody, but I gave this short song a 4-part setting. This is in At Your Altars, publishing. I think she wrote this for one of her colleagues at Garrett. I forget the details of this, and we didn't get it written down. Some of you may know. I give thanks to God when I remember you for our sharing in the gospel from the first day until now. And I think we could think of that as we think of Ruth. I give thanks to God when I remember you for our sharing in the gospel for the first day until now. That's meant to be a short song that we could repeat, and a 4-part setting is there. So Ruth had a lot of hymns in the Chalice Hymnal, the New Century Hymnal, Glory to God, Voices Together. She's one of the leading hymn writers of our time, and we all miss her, but we remember her as we sing her hymns. You can read her hymns without singing, as I'm doing this morning with you. It's a beautiful way of keeping her in our hearts. Ruth lives on in memory, spirit, and in love. She lives on in her writing. And here's a text that I discovered I'll show you. I've got this folder here. There's the original. And I have another notebook with some things in it, but it's tricky to as an editor find things that are represented the best of her work, and as we get older, then we lose our powers. Certainly, if you have Alzheimer's, you have that taking away what you were once able to do. But I found one in the folder here that, as near as I can tell, is unpublished. And she wrote it way back in 1993. A young Ruth Duck wrote these words. I have a tune for this. I'm hoping to sing this next month at the memorial service for Ruth. That'll be at Claremont. If you go to Ruth's website, ruthduck.com, you can find her obituary and information about her memorial service. That'll be next month. Let me read you this text from 93. Let me know if you know it's been published, or if you had heard this before. I offer you my life, O God, my light and hope, grateful for your steadfast love to me. All my work, all my loving, all my days and all my nights are the gifts I offer back to you, that all may know your peace and joy, and all may praise your name. I offer you my all. Make my life a channel of your love. I offer you my life, O Christ, my truth and way, you who freely gave yourself for me. All I am, all I will be, all my hopes and all my fears, all these things I offer up to you, that all may know your peace and joy, and all may praise your name. I offer you my all. Make my life a witness to your love. In offering my life, I find it once again blessed and changed according to your will. As a stream flowing downward joins the river, then the sea, so my heart finds its home joined to you, that all may know your peace and joy, and all may praise your name. I offer you my all. Change my life and fill me with your love. God, I offer you my all. So I don't know why this was never published. I guess she didn't think too much of it, but it seems to me that it reflects her true voice, a personal, a personal faith in God, a life-changing faith. And she, way back in 93, is offering God her life. And if this is a prayer, I think her prayer was answered. She gave her life to God. Make my life a channel of your love. Her life was a channel of God's love. Make my life a witness to your love. Change my life and fill me with your love. Ruth went through various suffering throughout her life, childhood, adult life, and later years, with Alzheimer's. She turned that suffering into beautiful expressions of faith. When she talks about the joy and pain of living, she knew about that. And the power in her writing is that she was able to transform the pain into a life of faith. God, I offer you my all, might be a good prayer for any of us. So I'm just wondering if we could, I'm not sure how to do this on Zoom, but there might be a person or two that would like to chime in with a story of how Ruth touched your life, or a favorite hymn of Ruth Duck's that I didn't get to today. I'm sure there are some others. And I wonder if you could just unmute and share if someone feels like they would like to add to the conversation here. Maybe we could open it up and see what happens. I could call on a couple of people, but maybe we could just leave it open. Is there somebody who would like to unmute and say a word of remembrance?
I just want to offer a quick testimony about Ruth Duck. My name is Jim Matulski, and I'm a UCC minister now, but I'm also an MCC minister, Metropolitan Community Church, the historic gay and lesbian, bisexual, transgender church. And I want to testify that Ruth Duck had more influence on the hymnody and liturgy of the Metropolitan Community Church movement than any other single person I can think of. If you went into an MCC church in the 1970s or 80s, you would find two hymn books next to each other, the Hymns for the Family of God and Because We Are One People, the earliest hymn book that she worked on. And then later, as the Because We Are One People hymn books fell apart, physically, the Ever-Flowing Streams book would be found in nearly every MCC church. And I guess I just want to say this. She spoke to the LGBT experience very specifically in her hymns, whether consciously or not. I mean, I do believe it was conscious. And the hymn that was the most popular MCC hymn in the 70s, 80s, and 90s was the one we always used at conferences. Was the original title was Lead On, O Cloud of Yahweh. And then it went through, changes. Lead On, O Cloud of Presence. There's a lot of different versions of it. But if you were to say to an MCC person from that period, what hymn spoke to us, it would be Lead On, O Cloud of Yahweh. And it's because we were an Exodus church, gay people leaving the mainline churches and the Catholic Church and the evangelical churches. And the verse in particular that I want to lift up, Lead on, O fiery pillar, we follow yet with fears, but we shall come rejoicing, though joy be born of tears. We are not lost, though wandering, for by your light we come, and we are still God's people. The journey is our home. And that one phrase, we are not lost, though wandering, and the journey is our home, spoke to the collective experience of LGBT people. And many other, we sang a lot of hymns. It's a singing church, but that one spoke to our liberation and to our leaving the church, but finding ourselves. So that's my tribute to Ruth Duck. She was a big, profound influence on LGBT liberation theology and on MCC music, hymnody, and liturgy. Thanks.
Thank you, Jim. Anybody else feel led to share?
I'd like to say something. I went to seminary with Ruth. She was in my class in seminary, and we got acquainted, and we both had an interest in music, obviously, and we had many discussions about that. But the thing I remember about Ruth was her kindness. She once reached out to me at a time when I was very low. And I hold that in my heart. Later, when we sort of went apart and then re-met when she was a pastor in Milwaukee, and I was doing campus ministry in Wisconsin. And I mentioned that to her, and she didn't remember it. She was just naturally kind and open. And I rejoiced when Ever-Flowing Streams came out, and I rejoiced when she went back to school and to work on her doctorate. and then came to Garrett, and her whole life developed in that way. And I'm just very touched by Ruth in many, many ways.
Thank you, David, for sharing that. Barbara Troxel, would you like to share a little bit? I see your name there. There you are.
Yes, certainly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just planning to get on. Ruth Duck came to Garrett Evangelical a few years after I got there, and her office and my office were right next to each other on the third floor of a building that did not have an elevator. And there were 6 women faculty up there now, all of them now of blessed memory. We really got our exercise. Ruth soon became a very, very dear friend, as well as a wonderful professor of worship. She always had students outside her door wanting to talk with her about whatever was happening for them in their lives. The women faculty would gather about once a month. The 6 of us on that floor saw each other regularly and had lots and lots of conversations and often some lunches together, eating our sandwiches together and so on. When we gathered, Ruth very often was able to share very honestly what was going on in her life. And as Dan had wonderfully stated, Ruth went through many, to quote one of our old hymns, many dangers, toils, and snares in her life, including within her second marriage and so on, and in many, many other ways. She, in the midst of all of that, and in the midst of that kind of sharing, she never lost sight of the presence of the love of God and the discerning guidance of the Holy Spirit to bring to all of us on the faculty at Garrett Evangelical, and even more so with the students themselves. She never lost that the dimension of God's love sustains me, meaning Ruth, through all of my days, no matter what. And that, as Dan has beautifully shared, has come out again and again in her hymns. And so it was with great appreciation that she and I shared offices next to each other, had a lot of conversations together, and a lot of deep, deep sharing. And while I'm up, let me just say, Dan has noted that Ruth's memorial service will be here at Pilgrim Place on February 22nd. It will be well live streamed, as well as the opportunity to be on Zoom, unless you want to come flying out to Claremont. And you would all be you would be very, very welcome to be with us that afternoon on the 22nd of February. And Dan will be the pianist and leading the choir. We're going to have a pickup choir that we'll do a rehearsal with, to be sure that people here sing pretty rigorously and vigorously, but this pickup choir will help that happen so that it can go out well on video and on live stream. So again, it was with enormous sadness that Ruth made the great transition on the 26th of December, and yet with deep thanksgiving that she did not need to suffer more years with Alzheimer's. Ruth told me years ago, my mother had Alzheimer's and it lasted for 20 years. Well, thank God for Ruth, it was about 8 or 9 years. And that is a deep blessing. Just, the loss of Ruth's life among us. Her hymns, as Dan has so beautifully stated, her hymns stay on with us as her presence in our midst. Thank you, Dan, very much for today, and thanks to everyone who's gathered for this wonderful morning. Thank you.
Thanks, Barbara. I know that you and Jean Boutillier visited Ruth regularly right up until the last. And
oh, yes.
Blessed to have such good friends.
Yes.
You have time for...
Or Marcia? Yeah.
Yeah. I first met Ruth when I came out during my seminary time in Kansas City. I would come out every summer and winter to PSR, Pacific School of Religion, to take amazing classes in the arts and worship. And I first met Ruth when I took her course in a summer, and I stayed the next week and took Brian Wren's course. So it was like immersion, like a baptism in amazing theology, and just really lit me up. I later got to spend lots of time with her through North American Academy of Liturgy, the feminist liturgy group. And I want to lift up one of her works related to North American Academy of Liturgy. She was president of that group one year and wrote poetry for our table gathering, and Mark Miller's on here, and he wrote the music. And then I wrote some narration for interfaith gatherings that's in the book Poetry of Grace that Dan talked about. And one line in my favorite piece of music in that, Prayers of the People, which is called For All Who Labor Without End, just seems incredibly poignant at this very moment. For all who search for righteousness, for all who and live the faith that they confess. And I think that we're in a moment where we need Ruth's words. So I give thanks.
Thank you, Marcia. I see Robin Knowles-Wallace is here, and was wondering if you could give us a word. I know that Ruth is very dear to you.
Thanks, Dan. And thanks, Marcia and Jim and everyone who's been witnessing to Ruth's humble, gracious power. I first called her to find out about another graduate school. I called her between Montessori music preschool classes in a lovely library in outside Detroit. And we got to talking about this other school. And all of a sudden in the middle, I said, "Oh, could I come and study with you?" And she was like, "Well, of course, I'm not on the doctoral faculty yet, but yes, I would be happy to work with you. And it sounds like we have some compatible interests." And so I turned out to be her first doctoral student, and sort of began to craft a doctorate in theology and liturgy. And I think what has stood out to me is that humility, the graciousness, the stories that people have shared here, there, and everywhere. And my own sense of once I graduated and got a seminary teaching position, Ruth was very clear that our relationship needed to change, that she was not only just my teacher and my mentor, but now we were colleagues. And when I came over to the UCC from United Methodism, she helped to write some of the recommendations for me, and she ended up preaching my ordination sermon. While the Alzheimer's was just on the edges of things, and I'm really honored that she did that. That being colleagues, that her encouragement of everybody to use their gifts, and all of God's children to be free to use their gifts. Absolutely vital. Dan and the UCC, thanks for doing this today.
Thanks, Robin, for sharing. I have in my folder of, I guess it's unpublished, Nothing Can Keep Us from Jesus. It says here at the top, for the service of ordination of Robin Knowles Wallace. Do you know anything about this piece, and was it ever published?
Yes, it's been published by GIA, I think, in Sam Young's collection. I think it might be the collection he did for funerals and so on. And was I honored? They were trying so desperately to keep it a surprise, which somebody at my church leaked. But it's a wonder, especially it's on Romans 8, and the refrain is especially wonderful. And Sam, of course, was quite aging by then as well. So what an honor I had that they wrote that.
Good. We're coming up toward the hour here. I wonder if there's anyone else that would like to share briefly.
Hi, Dan. It's Mark.
Mark?
I would share. Can you hear me okay?
You're a little soft. Can you speak up a little?
Yeah.
That's better.
I can also turn up my mic a little bit. When in 2015 was leading a hymn society morning worship and wanted to use Spirit Open My Heart, and but I wanted to make the final verse a little more inclusive. Her words, as you had said before, Dan, may I weep with those who weep, share the joy of sister brother. And we had a non-binary person helping lead the worship. And I said, and Ruth came in the room, and we were just about to start. And I said, what do you think we could do? And she grabbed my book and just like scribbled some words. And I thought, oh my God, it would have taken me a week to figure that out. She said, instead of joy of sister or brother, she said joy of kin together. And it worked, and it was beautiful, and it showed her genius. Later that year, Marcia, you were there when I found out the news. I was diagnosed with a brain tumor that was benign, but in the following months, I would play that song every day. I would sit at the piano and play it every day as a spiritual grounding to get myself through. And I wrote to Ruth after to let her know how much her words got me through that time. And I want to say thank you to you too, Dan, for including that. And I just wanted to play the words and the tune once, that last verse. Spirit, open my heart to the joy and pain of living as you love me. I love in receiving and in giving. Spirit, open my heart. May I weep with those who weep, share the joy of kin together in the welcome of Christ. May we welcome one another. Spirit, open my heart to the joy and pain of living as you love me. I love in receiving and in giving. Spirit, open my heart.
Beautiful. Thank you, Mark, for sharing that. Yeah, when Ruth was writing Sister Brother, it was cutting edge to include women. It was always men before, oh, man means everybody, right? And so she was bringing in Sister Brother. And as we know, our language is always shifting, and so we're moving into beyond the binary in our language, and Ruth was all in favor of that. So thank you for that adjustment there. We're coming up to the hour. I just have one more that I'd like to share a text of Ruth from Poetry of Grace. And I remember this was a scrap, and she wasn't sure if she had anything here. And I said, yeah, you got something here. And so I wrote a tune for this, but I'll just read the text. I won't try to sing it. Jesus Christ, hope of glory, gift of God, love's embrace. Death does not close the story of your love and boundless grace. I just love that refrain. I'm going to read it again, and then I'll give you the verses. Jesus Christ, hope of glory, gift of God, love's embrace. Death does not close the story of your love and boundless grace. Christ who died and rose up from the dead, you bring life this world cannot destroy. As we drink the cup and share the bread, here and now we taste of heaven's joy. Life is full of trouble and distress. We are poor and weak, we lose our way. Yet your spirit comes to heal and bless, speaking for us when we cannot pray. Living Christ, we live with trust in you, sharing in one body and one call, giving thanks to God in all we do, as the Spirit's fullness fills us all. Jesus Christ, hope of glory, gift of God, love's embrace. Death does not close the story of your love and boundless grace. As I said earlier, Ruth lives on in us, memory, spirit, and love. And the words that she gave, particularly the words that we can sing, are the words that rhyme, the words that use imagery, new imagery. She was a gift to this world, and she is still a gift through her writing, and we remember her this day and always. Thank you so much for coming. We'll see you at the Hymn Society Conference in Detroit, maybe, or some other place.
Thank everyone so much for attending. This has been a wonderful session, Dan. I appreciate you so much. Please stay tuned. We have Saturday sharings coming up, and we appreciate your help. Thank you.
Wash, O God, our sons and daughters, where your cleansing waters flow. Number them among your people. Bless as Christ blessed long ago. Weave them garments bright and sparkling. Compass them with love and light. Feel, anoint them, send your spirit, holy dove, and heart's delight. We who bring them long for nurture, by your milk may we be fed. Let us join your feast partaking, cup of blessing, living bread. God, renew us, guide our footsteps, free from sin and all its snares, one with Christ in living dialogue. spirit, children heirs. Oh, how deep your holy wisdom, unimagined all your ways. To your name be glory, honor. With our lives we worship, praise. We, your people, stand before you, water washed and spirit born. By your grace our lives we offer. Recreate us, God, transform.